What's up everybody, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different. On this channel, we talk about how I've built up a successful company over the past 6 years. We talk about things like how much money you can make, how good of a life that you have when things are all like rolling smoothly. But what we don't really talk about are all the bad sides of owning a contracting business. And it's not like we're doing that to deceive people or not really tell the full truth, but really who likes the complainer? And so it's not like that's what we want to do on this channel. Plus there's a lot of things that we can't control in business and it doesn't really make sense to focus on them. But I realize that doesn't mean that we should be totally ignorant and turn a blind eye to all of the problems that we come up with as contractors. So if you like this video, just make sure that you subscribe to the channel because this video is talking about all the bad things, but then the rest of the videos on my channel are all about how to tackle these bad things and how we actually have a successful business despite all of the issues. So number one is there's a lot of delayed gratification. Building a successful contracting business takes a lot of time, and a lot of people, including myself when I first started, I way underestimated when I was finally gonna start making money. So when you first start getting in business, unless you're doing things like subbing out all of your work, there's a lot of investments to be made. You gotta buy a lot of tools, a lot of equipment. Even right now I'm launching a brand new lighting business. And I was like, oh, all we gotta do is get some ladders. Well, each ladder is like $400. So it's not that much money, but when you add it all up and you gotta get 6 ladders, you're like, wow, I gotta spend $2,500 just in ladders. Things just add up, right? Not to mention you have trucks, equipment, all of the things that you need to actually run a successful business, and it's expensive. But the thing is, you could use that stuff over a really long period of time. So when you first get into business, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna be selling a project for $10,000 and I'm gonna have $5,000 worth of expenses. I'm gonna make $5,000, but in reality, that's not really true because the cost to start a business is very high. And so most likely you're not gonna be making any money for a long time, and that's if you are continuously growing the business. If you start the business and you're just doing side jobs here and there, then you'll probably be pretty profitable, but at the end of the day, you're just gonna have a side business, like a side job type of deal, and it won't be a true business. When I first started, my employees literally made more money than me, and I remember thinking like just how crappy that was, but if that's happening to you, it's actually pretty normal. The owner typically doesn't make that much money for a couple years, especially if you keep reinvesting back into the business. Number two is there's always a lot of competition. So one thing that I really admire and respect about a lot of blue collar guys is they're really hardworking, but that's kind of a little bit of a problem as far as competition, because you gotta think you're probably very hardworking, but all of your competitors are willing to work just as hard. And what I've realized is a lot of blue collar people, they're willing to basically break their bodies, like work until they can't work anymore, say 60, 70, 8 hours a week, and they're willing to not make very much money. So don't get into this business thinking that, oh man, I'm just gonna be able to sell so much work for whatever price that I want and it's super easy. Don't get me wrong, can it be done? Can you convince customers to pay more money than your competitors are asking for? 100%. That's what we do at my marketing agency, Contractor CEO, is help contractors become the premium company in their area, and that's exactly what I did with my concrete company. But does that mean that it's easy? Absolutely not. Be prepared for when you're in business, you are going to be charging probably more than your competition, and you're going to have to convince customers to still hire you anyways, even though your competitors are probably a lot less than you, because honestly, the truth of the matter is most contractors, they get into business, they work really hard, and then they go out of business because they're not profitable. So if you think about it, they work for like 2, 3, 4 years, basically not even making money, so they're doing things for free, and you are going to have to compete with people just like that. Number 3 is there's thin margins. So the crazy thing is, even if you are successful in business, then you're probably not gonna make that much money in terms of revenue compared to your profit. So I actually bought a report not long ago. I paid about $1,500 for a report, just learning more about the concrete industry. And what was crazy is they have a whole financial section to this report, and the average concrete company only makes 7% profit on their revenue. So if you kind of think about that, even if you do $1 million a year in revenue, and it's gonna sound really cool, you're like, man, I have $1 million business. At the end of the day, that business is only gonna profit $70,000 on average. So the thing is, if you wanna make more money, then you have to be a way above average business owner. And don't get me wrong, that's definitely possible. But don't think that just going into business and you're gonna have a 7-figure company or maybe even a multi-7-figure company and you're guaranteed to have a lot of profit. That is 100% not true. This isn't something like software or like for instance, Verizon, where they're gonna sell us a $200 a month package and it costs them literally pennies to service us. That is 100% not what it's like to be a contractor at all. So just know if you're getting into it, it is for sure a volume game. I mean, there's companies out there, the biggest company in my area, they do $20 million a year in revenue, and they're exceptional. They do 20% profit. That means they profit $4 million a year. So is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. But how many companies are like that in my area? Literally just them, and I'm probably next behind them as far as how well my business is doing. And we are still nowhere near doing $4 million of profit a year. Number 4 is what I like to call a high ignorance tax, meaning just like the saying, if you've ever heard of it, if you f around, you're gonna find out. And if you've never really heard of that saying, what it really means is that if you're basically gonna keep playing games, playing around, and doing something that you don't really fully understand the consequences, then at the end of the day, you're gonna find out, meaning that bad things are gonna happen to you. In this business, it is 100% like that, where if you F around, you're gonna find out, meaning that if you just go into business, you don't know what you're doing, you're just throwing numbers out there, and you're not really being smart about how you sell jobs, how you complete jobs, who you hire, all of that stuff, then you are for sure going to have a lot of mistakes. And so by far the most costly thing in this business, in my opinion, is gonna be mistakes. It's not gonna be mistakes on the job site, that's definitely one thing. But the most common mistakes are not marketing enough, not pricing enough, hiring the wrong people, not bringing in the right customers, right? These are all mistakes that are avoidable, but when you don't know what you're doing in the very beginning, just know you're probably gonna have a lot of those mistakes, and they do cost a lot of money. Number 5 is we have very demanding customers. So when you think about it, a customer is spending anywhere, like for instance, what I sell, which is concrete. My average job size is $17,000, which is a lot higher than my competition, most likely, but they're spending a lot of money with me. But they're not just spending a lot of money just to spend money, they actually expect a very high quality product and high quality service in return for that money. So they're very demanding. So you gotta think whenever you're selling a high dollar job, even if it's low margin, your customers are gonna have very high expectations. They're gonna expect you to answer your phone, get there on time, be professional, and all that. But also keep in mind, if you pair that with a very thin margin business, the only way to make a lot of money is by being really busy. You have to be very efficient. You have to do a lot of things at once. And sometimes that's why a lot of contractors are known to not be very good at communicating. It's not because they're bad people, or more than likely they're not even irresponsible. They're just too busy and they don't really know how to handle that. So just know if you're getting into business, your customers are gonna demand the world from you and they're not gonna understand how hard it is. And that's just the name of the game. That kind of is what it is. But over time, as you attract better and better customers, and this is why I'm such a proponent for better marketing, if you have better marketing, attract the higher paying customers. I know this sounds crazy, but some of your worst customers are gonna be the people who are willing to pay the least. Probably because if you ask someone to do a $10,000 patio, and that's their whole entire life savings, they're gonna care a lot about it. Versus if you sell a $20,000 patio to someone who has $1 million in the bank, all of a sudden it's not as stressful for them. They're not as like uptight and scared and nervous the whole entire time. So I personally think marketing and branding and attracting the right people is so much easier of an experience and so much better to service people who are like that. Number 6 is risk with jobs. So I look at my wife and she is a hand surgeon. So she's a hand surgeon PA, but she does hand surgeries. The crazy thing is when she does a hand surgery, they go in, they cut people's bones up, they drill them together, they put titanium in there, they sew them all up, and then the customer wakes up, and the crazy part is the customer never even knows if the surgeon did a good job or not. And on top of that, the insurance pays for it, so almost no matter what, that insurance is gonna get paid for their project, and the customer will never even know how good of a job the surgeon did. And when I really thought about it, a lot of industries are very similar to that. Or let's just say, for instance, if it's software or even like my marketing company, the worst thing that can possibly happen in a business like that is a customer just fires you. They say, hey, I'm no longer gonna pay you, and you stop servicing that customer. Well, imagine in our line of work, let's just say if you sell a $20,000 project and it's gonna take you 4 days. Now you're into the project, you're on day 1, and you realize that this customer is a total psychopath and there's nothing that you can do about it. At that point, you've already started the project, you're in a relationship with that customer, and you have no choice but to finish out the project, or you can leave and potentially get sued, or they're gonna leave bad reviews. There's a lot of bad things that can happen. So as a contractor, there's a lot of risk that we take on our jobs. So there's times where customers might not want to pay. There's times where you're going to make a mistake on a job and it's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's just the name of the game for doing what we do. Number 7 is labor challenges. And this one, I know a lot of contractors complain about a lot. And it's kind of funny when you get into it because you're like, well, man, I'm going to be paying people 25, 30 bucks an hour. There's surely a lot of good people out there who are willing to accept a higher dollar pay, and they're going to be professional people. They're gonna show up on time, they're gonna be respectable, they're gonna be clean shaven. But in reality, like that was kind of silly that I even ever thought that was a possibility, because as a contractor, even though you're paying more wages than very professional roles, it is a challenge to find someone who is very professional. For instance, look at it this way. I did a Google search, and let's just take another profession like a bank teller. So you go into a bank, you walk up to a bank teller, they're very well dressed, they're professional, they talk nice, they're very well educated, and you'd probably think, wow, that person probably makes a lot of money. But in reality, that bank teller is probably working for closer to like $20 to $25 an hour, and they're that professional. So let's just say if you're a bank, it's pretty easy to find people that are professional, show up on time, and punctual at a relatively low cost. Us as contractors, you could pay someone $25, $30, $35, $40 an hour, and they still might not be a very stand-up individual. I'm not saying that all people that you hire in the blue-collar world are unprofessional. That is absolutely not true. And for instance, my team at my concrete company, they're amazing. But is it really easy to find people who are respectable, who show up on time, who do what they say they're gonna do? Absolutely not. And so just know, if you get into this, you're going to have to search very, very hard to find the right people. And when you have the right people, you're gonna have to do everything in your power to keep them, because you know that if they leave or if you lose them, it's gonna be very hard to replace them. And number 8, at least in my business, we have a lot of seasonality in weather. And so that's a very difficult thing, right? You gotta think that if you're hiring people, especially on the back end, like for instance, think about salespeople or office people, project managers, those people are salaried positions. And now let's just say that you have a business where you're only gonna work 8 or 9 months, but you have to pay your salaried positions year round. So as contractors, it's very difficult to run your business and manage cash flow if you are in a seasonal business. And just know that if you're getting into one, that is gonna make it extremely difficult to scale. That's actually the reason why I'm opening up my lighting business right now, is basically just because the lighting business, our busy season is gonna be from October through about February. And that is totally opposite of what my seasonality is for my concrete company, which my busy season is more like May through August, give or take. And the number 9, it's very dependent on the economy. Again, we're not like Verizon, where no matter how bad the economy is, we have to have a phone. So we're gonna pay our Verizon bill every single month. In our line of work, we're doing basically luxury work for the most part. Because you gotta think, even if someone is, like for me, replacing a driveway, that doesn't mean that they have to. What I basically like to say replacing a driveway is for the most part, is a first world problem. Meaning that at the end of the day, someone doesn't need to replace their driveway, almost always. Most of the time when people are replacing a driveway, it's because they want to. They think it's ugly, they don't think, they're kind of embarrassed by it, and they have these problems. Like for instance, if someone's remodeling a kitchen, it's most of the time not because their old kitchen doesn't work, it still works, they just think it's ugly. Well, now all of a sudden, let's just say that the economy gets bad, people tighten up their spending, and now all of a sudden they're not spending money on things that they don't technically need, which hurts contractors. So you just gotta know, if you're getting into this business, there are bad times and there's hard times with the economy. So in good times, we have to save up our money, we have to live below our means, so that way we could weather the storms and live through the bad times. Tons of contractors do it. And what I always like to say, again, why I like marketing, I don't want to be a dead horse or anything like that, but you got to think about it, a wolf in the wild. When wolves in the wild, they go out, right, and they go hunting, who eats first? The alpha wolf eats first. All the other wolves eat last. If there's a lot of wolves, or if there's a lot of elk and the wolves have plenty to eat, then all of the wolves get to eat. And that's what I like to think that happened even lately, for instance, with COVID, right? With COVID, there was tons of home projects. Even the best contractors out there, they would all book up. So then all these other contractors who weren't really the alphas, they were just kind of like the lower down the market contractors, they got to eat plenty because there was plenty of work. Now all of a sudden we're seeing that the economy is shifting, and now the alphas are still eating because they get the first call and they're not as booked up. But the people way down the line are having a much harder time basically surviving in this type of economy, and it could even get worse. So in order to make sure that you are at the right spot in your business, how you actually do that is you need to look like the premium contractor in your area, even if you're not right now, and that has to do with brand. So it's good website, good messaging, good marketing, etc. Because just remember, when times get tough, you want to be the person who gets the first call, not the last. The best way to look at this is that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So even though things appear hard, if you still want to improve, all you have to do is take one step at a time. It's not about finishing the marathon today. It's about just taking one step at a time, and eventually you will finish the marathon and you will conquer all of these negatives about the business. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and we're gonna be talking about all the positive things on how to actually conquer these negatives that we talked about in today's video. I'll see you there.